How do you have racism without racists? There is no way to create a fairer society without naming people who make racism possible. There's no denying the physical division of people by physical appearance. There's much denial, however, about who is at fault or what to do about it. What divides people by appearance is the idea of different races of humans. The belief in race is what divides. But how does a belief divide us, and why? Who is doing this? Why doesn't it ever change? When you believe you are a different race from others, it creates a wedge, separating your group from theirs. Nothing, then, is ever about us, or ours, but about them, and theirs. A competition for who gets what. It's now a fight, even if there's enough for everyone. Race creates levels of people based on appearance. Whoever wins the fight gets the top position, and then decides what's best for everyone. Placing value on people based on appearance doesn't make sense. It just divides. Let's talk about what does not divide us. Talking about the origins of categorizing people by race does not divide. Most people give little to no thought to how the idea of a white race or a black race began. Or, by who. Why are these two races the names of colors? Why is a nationwide practice never publicly acknowledged or discussed? And why practice something we can't talk about? Studying historical facts about how people have been treated in the past based on race does not divide. Examining outcomes of people of different races when they do the same things does not divide. Acknowledging these differences and honestly discussing a cause does not divide. Admitting why race was created, who benefits, and who doesn't, does not divide. Reviewing the lack of action for past wrongs does not divide. None of these things do anything to physically separate groups by appearance. Then what does? When we lie about groups that were intentionally created, and that exist today, it keeps them divided. Lying about the advantages and disadvantages of groups also keeps them divided. Making no effort to spend time outside your race keeps people divided. Not learning about or celebrating other races keeps people divided. Focusing on intent instead of action divides. Using a different set of moral values for different groups ensures they remain physically divided. Believing we don't have to do anything divides. Those who benefit from race keep it alive. What will make it change is when they who benefit make a decision to change it or when they no longer benefit. So what do we do? How can we move forward? What do we use to create more unity? Unity is a type of relationship based on shared values. It can't be achieved by removing or adding a person. Removing a statue is a respectful gesture but does not create unity. Adding a holiday doesn't do anything either. It begins with an agreement among people as to what is right and what is wrong. Only you can decide to do what's right. When you ask yourself, what have I done? What can I do now? When you decide to break away from a group and do what's right instead. It takes courage to go against a status quo. When you stop worrying about yourself when you are not in the most need, when you stop telling someone else, they are the ones who need to do something, unity begins. To admit failures and take personal accountability for how you may, or may not contribute to racism, is when you can say you are doing your part. Dreams of great men can change the course. Let's review some of the myths about racism, and why so many people are confused. Why racism is a moral dilemma and a choice of each individual. When we see how it is an individual choice, maybe we decide to act in line with the morals we believe we have. In the words of Martin Luther King, he dreamed that his 4 children would one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. He didn't dream that no one would notice that they had color, but that people would acknowledge the history and experience associated with their darker skin. He hoped that the stigma associated with dark skin would fall on the people who created it for exploitive purposes, and those who still believe in it. Not his daughters, who were just born with it. Imagine what it would look like if race was divided by character instead of appearance. If we chose our friends, family and social groups based on having unbiased morals and values we believe we have. It would be unlikely for people in our groups to all be the same color. Dr. King's dream has yet to be realized. You do not have to be a bad person to hold racist beliefs. The idea of different races is upheld in everyday life, and it would be impossible to not have this conditioning. But what you believe can change. Unlike your appearance, you choose what to believe. Since any person can hold racist views, what matters most is what they decide to do about it. Most people don't set out to treat others unfairly, or be a bad person. When we witness or are told about bad acts carried out by members of our group, we should not feel like we have to defend them. It's not our job to protect bad people who have nothing to do with us. When we don't try to defend bad people just because they are members of our race, we see that we have more in common with the ones who are just doing the right thing. If you act in line with your values every time, it will never be a problem to make the right choice. Next, let's talk about the Civil Rights Act of 1968. It is widely believed that this law made everything equal. It actually didn't do anything like that. The anti-discrimination laws are race-neutral, even though only black people had been legally denied human rights. The act itself is not an action. It does not require anyone to do anything. What it did was remove the legal restrictions that kept people from sharing public spaces, and creating federal policies that were based on appearance. It does not apply to private places or institutions. Mainly, there is no way to enforce the Civil Rights Act, so it only allows a person of any race to sue if they believe they experienced discrimination. Since there is no active enforcement, it relies on the honor system. Since it was passed, segregation by race is worse, not better. The Civil Rights Act also created a commission that is responsible for tracking data for things like housing, unemployment, and education, based on race in order to examine outcomes. It mandated for equal employment opportunities. However, this can only be enforced if an individual wins a lawsuit. Most people who experience discrimination do not sue due to the heavy financial and personal burden it takes in order to do so. Especially since most organizations have significantly more resources than an individual does. It was said by Martin Luther King that morality cannot be legislated, but behavior can be regulated. Judicial decrees may not change the heart, but they can restrain the heartless. Dr. King knew that without the use of real force, it would be impossible to change the cruel and unfair realities of his life. He knew that if the majority of people made the right choice, a Civil Rights Act or other legal action wasn't necessary. All it would take to reduce racism, once and for all, is for people to care equally. Most people don't plan to make a life of treating others unfairly or being a bad person. Moral decisions are made every day. Good decisions create good actions, and bad decisions create bad ones. But all people have a choice.